Testing 1, 2, 3. Sounds good.
Check, 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 1, 2, check, 1, 2. Should I just move it closer, maybe? Check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Check, check, hello. Check, check.
Oh, it's just the room is really quiet.
Check, check, check.
There you go.
Cool. All right, should we go? Yeah, geez.
Go Rocket.
Thanks. All right. Hello, everybody. We're going to start the meeting. Welcome. Let's give a round of applause for Josh and Nick, first of all, the co-hosts here. I like to do these. These are not utilized enough in the congratulatory things. I call it the Charlie Brown move, like, go Charlie Brown. So, I don't know. Hooray for Charlie Brown. I don't know. My name's Toby Crines. You haven't seen me, probably, most of you. I have. I was at the first 30 or so of these and haven't been at the last 30 or so. So really excited to be back, honestly. I basically haven't left the house at night for the last 6 years since I've had children. So they're finally at an age where I can exit the building and attend events such as these. And see all the shining faces that exist at night. Like all you like little raccoons that come out at night. And I honestly, usually by now I'm like trying to force my kids to get to bed. And I usually end up like the gimmick is like, we'll read 3 books and then I'll lay down with you and then they'll go to bed hopefully because they'll know I'm next to them or something. But usually like I'm the one who goes to sleep first. So we'll see what happens up here. I mean, I don't know if I'll make it. Hopefully nobody like comes and sidles me. But we're gonna I have about like, we'll say 10 minutes of like this like brainstorm I had that's like the last 8 years of like stuff I've been like thinking about and curious about. And it's a bunch of idea starters for this meetup tonight. So I'm gonna just like blow through this huge list of like ideas that we can discuss. Most of them have to do with outsourcing, but I also think like related to outsourcing is just business, best practice, thought stuff. So some of the ideas are related to like how I run my business and like things I've done over the years and philosophies I've like waded through. And so like, as we go through all these ideas, if there's something that you're like, oh, that sounds interesting or weird, like jot it down or something and we can talk about it. So I'm gonna just blast through a bunch of ideas, hopefully spur some thought and conversation, and then we can just have a deeper conversation here. So when my wife became pregnant about 7 years ago with our first child, I was running a freelance. I was like, I'm doing this freelance thing where I'm like taking customers, doing the work, but I was like doing it so like without any thought. Like I'd quit my job like 10 years ago, so I was like at it 3 or 4 years and like was just like, yeah, I'll do that, yeah, I'll do that. And I had like no like, didn't think at all about the process, like a business process. I was like kind of like anti-business process, and so my wife became pregnant, and I was like going crazy, like working some all-nighters and just like doing really poor time management. And so I like told myself, I was like, look, I'm like not feeling good about what I'm doing. I'm either gonna change things drastically, or I'm going to quit and go work at Target or something. Anyone that might hire me. So I just decided to give it a go. So I started reading business books and like just getting curious about business basically. And so that's kind of like what led to all this. So I'm like, how can I not go crazy running a freelance company thing? And so just gonna start blasting through these conversation starters. How to outsource your first web development project. Outsourcing for me like came to mind as I was like, oh, maybe I can like farm out work and then I won't have to do it and then I'll have free time. But like I like learned pretty quickly that like there's a lot more, like you can do that, but it usually doesn't save time if you do it that way. It actually like increases headaches. And so why outsource website development work at all? Why outsourcing goes good, why it goes bad, how to get the best results, how to choose where to outsource. I've outsourced in all of these countries and maybe more, I don't know. Best practices for managing your outsourced web developer, freelancer. And this concept of the calm company, which is like a newer concept that I'm like really like, it's like a philosophy of running a business and I'm really curious and buying into it right now. And so this next little section is about the calm company versus the agitated company. The calm company, if you think about like your business today, when I was like 7 years ago, when I was talking those first 3-4 years of my business, I was an agitated company. I didn't know it. And in fact, I didn't know I was becoming a calm company until the last year or two when I kind of like started thinking about it. But the agitated company, Slack, if you're like on Slack, and if you're available on Slack, you might be an agitated company. There's like indicators that like indicate like how, whether you're an agitated or a calm company. A calm company means that like you're not jumping from this to this to this. You're generally working less than 40 hours a week. You can see the long view. Things don't like knock you off your game very much. And I'll get into some general ideas here. Now this is the whole. The people leading this philosophy are the Basecamp people, like basically the two founders of Basecamp, and really the one founder is like really driving this calm company philosophy. But like these are his ideas basically. It's profit. So if you're a calm company, if you are profitable, you're protecting people's time. That means you and anyone you outsource to. Reasonable expectations, working 40 hours a week. You get time off. Everybody else gets time off. Smaller as opposed to bigger. Meetings as a last resort. Contextual communication. That's kind of like when to use Slack, when to use email. Asynchronous first, real-time second, meaning like generally you want to use email as opposed to Slack. More independence, less interdependence. Sustainable practices that can run for the long term. These are just some other things that I was thinking about. The calm company outsources the stuff that's least important. I have a friend who says that the only stuff that gets outsourced is the stuff that isn't important, which I also think there's some truth there. The calm company owns the work and doesn't blame or expresses regret when it loses its cool. It always gravitates to more calm. It takes the long view, works on the business, is anti-fragile. And this is just something, this is like me lecturing the class today, but this is like a big thing. Like if you read any what do you call it? Like outlier business literature, like 4-Hour Workweek, Moneyball, stuff like that. Generally, the philosophy is like everybody else is doing it wrong. Like if you follow what you think are best practices, it's probably wrong. Like you're not a calm company if you're doing that generally. Things, and I just put these like, these are things that I often hear in my customers, and some of those aren't web dev companies, but like things that might have no value that you might put high value on. And that's customer service, clean quality code, pricing, English written email skills, your personality, social media, anything, maintenance package options, your location. I have some silly examples that I thought of just happened recently. But the idea is like all these things, like this Paychex thing. So Paychex is my payroll company. So basically at one point I was like, I don't want to do payroll, I'm going to outsource it. And that was like that was a good move for me. And like, I hate my payroll company though. Like they suck at customer service, blah, blah, blah. Like they don't do anything right, but I like, had this like long experience where I was like, guys, I want to leave you because you're too expensive, and here's the alternative. And I just like emailed my rep, and then like 2 weeks later, she gets back to me and like without an answer. Bottom line is after like a month of like back and forth of me just being like, can you like meet this price? They said, yeah, we'll meet it. I said, okay, great. I'm done. I mean, we'll keep going then for the next year. And it was even one of these silly like cable contracts where they're like, call us back in a year because this is going to expire. I'm like, whatever, I'll deal with it in a year. And like basically inertia ruled the day. Like I was happier just doing nothing than like dealing with the headache of switching. This is another like me lecturing you thing. Is basically to distinguish between buyers and the people you might be working with at a company. The people that sign the checks generally care about the business results, and the people that you're working with care about saving their own ass, just generally speaking. So this is just something I always try to keep in my head. Anytime I'm getting flack from anyone up and down the company, I'm like, who signed my check? And are they gonna be pissed about what I'm doing or not? This is just something I like to repeat after me, project managers. Your team will create delightful headaches you'll be required to resolve. Your team will create delightful headaches you'll be required to resolve. Nobody will be happy with your solution. Yes. Project managers unite. Okay, so I have just this week, this is all like so timely. I was like, everything's coming together for this MSPWP talk because just this week I had one of my, I have one contractor that I work with on like almost every project, and he did something that like really hurt, like just like twisted a knife on my business. He didn't know he was doing it. Maybe he knew, maybe not, I don't know. But like he did this thing, so I'm just gonna share this example. Basically like, this is an example, it's A, timely, and B, it illustrates like I'm a total idiot about stuff in general. But this one I actually don't think was my fault. The gist of it is I have this guy that I totally trust. He's like my guy, he lives in the country of Colombia. He's like in touch with all my customers. He has a company email account. It turns out he's been using that email to like leverage contracts with other companies. So he's a freelancer, he's selling his services, but he'll like use the company email like strategically to like support his case in getting a gig, which is like, I had no idea he was doing it until I saw this earlier this week. So this guy who he was been working with, Alejandro, I never met him, never talked to him. But he's been emailing me now, just like trolling me, asking me for $2,000. And I'm like, who is this guy? And then I go on Twitter. He's like, so I was like listed as a premier developer or whatever with Modern Tribe. No longer because of this. Something I had nothing to do with, but my contractor was a complete idiot, basically ruined it for me. This thing that I worked really hard to get and like relationships, blah, 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 and then getting all these emails that are like really trolly, like if you don't pay me $2,000, I'm gonna sue you. Another one, if you don't pay me, I'm gonna sue you. So good old humans. And my lawyer says, aren't people the worst? So this is something that I think is like probably the critical question if you're going to outsource at all, is just like define why you want to outsource. For me, it's that I want to be home with my kids, and I want to build a business that I can raise my kids with, like so I can be home as much as possible. So that's what all my outsourcing thing is basically to make me more sane so I can not be working nights and weekends, basically. So that's it. That's my like ideation thing, and I can go like for hours on anything you saw up there, but I'm really curious to know like where are you at and what do you want to talk about? And we have a mic, we're live streaming, and
please use the mic so the live streamers can hear you and it's on the archive.
So who here has considered outsourcing and not done it? And why haven't you done it?
So after a talk, you telling us your horror story, maybe none of us want to consider. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about now your plans to build maybe a firewall between you and your contractors.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, this guy, I trust him. He's a great guy. He's also a total idiot human, like I am. And like, you can't stop stupid human stuff from happening. Like, you just can't. There's no protections. Like at a company like Lumenfire, something like that could easily happen. Like, if you have either idiots or people who are trying to do something bad, you know, like, you can't protect yourself against bad people or stupid people, you know? That's my belief anyway.
But you don't have to give them a company email address.
Right. So that's the trade-off though. Like I'm putting up this risk. So like, yeah, you don't have to, but like, you can only trust someone so far, and then you got to trust them. And like, my mind was blown when this happened this week. I had no idea that it would cross somebody's mind to do this. It's like, why didn't we lock the cockpit doors before 9/11? I don't know, but I also think like, I really have two options, or three, let's say. We continue to trust him, we remove his access to his email account, and then this never happens. But then that creates other headaches for me if I keep him on, or for other people that I might bring on, because ultimately, like, the headaches that the company email solves are like communication headaches mainly, and like staff onboarding, offboarding headaches. Because we share Google Docs all the time, and like, because he has a Google account, now I can cut off all his access with one click, basically, if in the event that I need to fire him. So I see it both ways. I'm going, and what I'm dealing with now is like, do I trust him enough to keep him on the team? Because if I trust him enough, then he's going to get an email account. If I don't trust him, then he's fired. That's where I'm at with it, and I don't know where I'm going to land on it. But what do you think, though?
Well, I mean, we give some of our contractors company emails. We don't give them lumenfire.com ones. They get lumenfire.net ones, mostly because we don't want to pay for a Google account for not using them that much. And we can share with them. So we use contractors differently here, in that because we have a full-time staff. But yeah, I mean, it's a big risk to give somebody who doesn't technically work for you your brand equity. So I'm really shocked he was able to pull it off, because it's like, how did this guy not ever talk to you and think he was working with the Mighty Mo? It's just really strange that he wouldn't. My hunch is that he knew. This guy, this third party, Alejandro, my hunch is that he's lying at this point and saying like, I want my money back, and I'll troll anyone I need to troll to get it. You know? Or he's like, I see this email account, Toby's got money, I'll go sue him.
Could be, yeah, exactly.
You can't sue the Colombian guy.
Right, yeah. That's my hunch, but I don't know. He could be totally like, I thought I was working with the Mighty Mo. I thought the Mighty Mo paid people named Renee through Payoneer. You know, like I thought that's how it happened, you know? But, yeah.
And of course, you can just be like, show me the contract that we signed. If you don't have one, goodbye.
His legal case is not very strong, but his like headache case is huge. Like he just lost me a set of leads that I worked really hard to get, you know, just through one tweet or whatever, you know.
Yep. The microphone can come to you.
Yeah, I can help you.
I know for us it's been a hard problem outsourcing dev work, because we want to make sure that the developer that we're working with is somebody that we trust. Mm-hmm. We don't give them in-house accounts. They have to have their own established brand and their own established presence. And the way that we look at it is, we will outsource. Again, what you put up there is so relevant. What part of the project that we can hand off and not have to worry about. And then it's also, it's kind of a testing process, because, you know, okay, we gave you this garbage part and you were able to handle that, then next time I'll bring you on for something that's a little bit more risky, and if you do well there, then we'll bring you back for more and more work.
So what part of the project did you care so little about that you decided to hand it off? In one project that we did, it was a custom-built carousel. It was something that we could have gone and grabbed something off the shelf, but the customer was really, really bitching about wanting something custom for themselves, and I wasn't willing to spend that amount of time working on something that, there are 30 freaking plugins out there that already do this. So a friend, somebody that I knew that was decent at it, he's like, well, I'll take a crack at it. I gave him
the money for his portion of the work and his, and it's become a really nice back and forth relationship where there's parts of a project, and with him in particular, it's more that aspect of working with graphics. He's really good at that, so that's what he's been come to get to be known with us about. It's like, okay, he's our go-to guy for, for images, for videos, for those interfaces. It's like, oh, somebody wants a custom interface to upload video. We'll send it to Jeff. And it's one of those things where it's like coming up with that list of people, understanding who's in your community. For us, the big scary is outsourcing off continent.
Why is that scary to you?
Just because, at least for me, I like to have that face-to-face. I like to be able to know.
Out of city is what,
that's
out
enough.
of a 5 mile radius
Well,
gives you,
we have a couple people, but the thing is, we've already sat down with them face-to-face for whatever reason at one given point in time, and we know these people. We know a couple of people that are virtual assistants that are off continent. One's down in Bolivia, another one's in Australia. And both these people are excellent at what they do. And we know this because we've seen their work over a period of time. Do we give them accounts? No, we don't. They've got their own brand. They've got their own, their own footprint. So we will go out of our way to promote them. So, it's like if somebody asks us, we will promote them. We will give them, we will give you their information. But you're not signing the contract with Adele from Bolivia through us. Or we're not going to sign that contract. We will give you her information. You sign a contract with her. She gets that customer, and we share. We share the project that way.
Ashley?
Oh, I don't actually know what I was going to say. Okay. I had something.
I actually had that question about off-continent. I was looking for other people in my social network that could help me out on projects, because I offer full creative print, production, marketing, and just said, hey, who are my web developer friends? Didn't realize I had public posted. I was inundated by international developers that had seen this, and for 2 days, I was constantly getting messages. How do you decide who is worth working with when you don't have that face-to-face, and you only see a snippet of work?
Yeah. So I have this like thing that I do all the time to answer this question. It's just a process I run, and the process is this: I go to let's say Upwork.com. Let's say there was one recently where there was like a page that I had that was on the internet, and I needed it converted to a Divi theme landing page. So like the pretty straightforward, like from defining the thing. I go, build it in Divi, make it look exactly like that. That was the project. And the process that I always use for this is I go to like Upwork or some other thing. It could be your list that, it could be just 30 emails, but I choose 3. I offer it at a really low price. Like I'm going to pay very little money, and I want it done tomorrow. I'll be checking in at 8 a.m. and I'll see if it's done, and if it's not, but you get people who accept those terms, and then you can figure out if they're a good fit basically from that. And usually at least one of those are good, and if not, then you do it again. It takes you another 24 hours. And
Okay, I have 2 things. Hold the mic for a while. Okay, one to that. If I'm on the other side of Upwork, I'm going to assume that somebody who wants to pay me nothing and want it done really quickly doesn't actually really want to work with a professional. So how do you make sure that you're that you're not getting bottom of the barrel people, I guess.
Yeah. So this is like, have you seen the movie Moneyball or read the book? This is what Moneyball is about. They're saying you find the inefficiencies in the market and you exploit them. And in the case of Upwork, you have people from all over the world who are competing for this. People in Pakistan who are like, $1 an hour, heck yeah. Like, I will work all night for you. Literally, they're like, I'm going to be on this. And some of them are good. Some of them have the skills, some not. But like, that's the market inefficiency. And so like, from my perspective, I'm going, surely there are some great people in Pakistan or other countries where $1 an hour is great money that are great people. That's my hunch and I guess my contention. So the inefficiency I would exploit would be like, I'm going to pay little for people who appreciate little. And this ridiculous turnaround time, which I admit I'll tell them it's ridiculous, but I'm like, this is the barrier to entry. And like, the people that will do that are like desperate for this work. And so like, I don't see it as like a non-professional thing, or in some ways, like I know in 24 hours if I have a winner, basically. Maybe I didn't find a winner, but like at least I know in 24 hours. Versus on Upwork, there are people charging $60, $100 an hour who are great developers, and they're all over the world too. But usually those people you don't get 24-hour turnaround time.
No.
You get, yeah.
Because you wouldn't give 24
No,
hour turnaround
no
time.
no way in hell. Like totally, yes, yes. So I don't know. Does that answer your question at all?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. Okay, so I actually have a little bit of experience hiring, outsourcing from, this was when Elance, I think Elance doesn't exist anymore. But I was working with a client and we were both pretty fresh and we needed somebody to do coding that I wasn't capable of. So we went on Elance, hired somebody, and it was a nightmare. He ended up like personally harassing me and my client, and he did like a DDoS attack on the website and my personal website because he didn't do the job, and so we wanted to stop the job, and that made him mad. So we talked to Elance about it, and my client complained and said, what are you going to do about this? And they were like, well, the money you've already spent is gone, but we're going to help you find somebody who's really good. So, and it was actually just common sense. If we had been smart about it from the start, we wouldn't have gone through that headache. But like, it was just somebody who had really high ratings and a lot of reviews. And the first person we found was from Serbia. The second person was from the Philippines, and he was wonderful. He was fantastic, and I ended up hiring him for some other stuff too. But it was really just common sense. Like if at the beginning we would have been smarter and just been like, whoa, we're only going to look at people who have 4 or 5 stars and a lot of reviews, we would have been fine. So I guess if you go on a site like that, which is actually really helpful, I would take the ratings and the reviews seriously.
Yeah, and
especially when it's somebody from off continent.
Yeah, I would say run that for anyone. And the thing that's cool about Upwork, at least, is they rate the people who do the hiring. And so like, I take our rating on there really seriously too. Like, so those 3 people I hire, they all get paid regardless of whether they finish it. The rate that I offered was so low that I just go, whatever. Yeah, I like that. So love it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, it's kind of basic, but sometimes you need to be reminded of common sense things.
One other thing is to actually, if you're actually looking to hire someone, actually have a test. Come up with a page that has like 5 or 6 errors in it that and then say, fix this. They should be, it's one of those things that it's like, you shouldn't make it too obvious, but it shouldn't take them more than like 10 minutes. And if the coder gets it back to you in the given time, and I've actually sent off one where they actually found more stuff than was initially the test for, and it's like, okay, so this person's on the ball. But it's one of those things when you don't know somebody and you don't have an in, you need to come up with an in for your company.
I think another interesting thing about this, the test thing. So I think when I think about that, I think like you test what's important. For me, I don't really care about code quality because my customers don't care about code quality. I used to have customers that cared about code quality. They all fired me. Now I have customers who care about communication. And so when I go on Upwork, so when I found my guy here, like the test that I ran, actually ran like 20 tests and then did a series of interviews. But like all I was testing up front was English skills. I said, do they say they have a minimum amount of code ability? If yes, then we move on to, if they just say they do, then we move on to the English skills. And I told them, film yourself, it was that test, but just tell me, don't even like code it. Just film yourself on Skype and record it and send me the MP4 or whatever. Because for me, the English skills were more important than the actual code and the ability to like articulate what they're seeing more than.
But that falls back to what you were saying before. What is it that you're outsourcing, and understand what it is actually that you're outsourcing. Because a lot of people are like, well, I'm just outsourcing the dev portion of it. Understand that dev work actually comes with more assets to it than just dev work. If you're going to have to take that code and then sell it back to your customer, you have to understand what they put into that code. It's the same thing with like, if that person is going to be intrinsically talking to your customers, do they have the capacity to do that?
So I was actually going to bring up the question of, so I did some outsourcing back when I was a freelancer, and it was fairly profitable. I was making more money than I'd made doing the work myself, but I had to fix everything. And I mean everything. And I was hiring a very well-respected PSD to HTML or PSD to website conversion place. They had good guys. They were just sloppy. And they didn't understand the spec, and they would make really bad decisions. And they had all these little things that they wanted to use that were their own. And I'm like, this is disgusting. Like, I don't ever want to touch this code. And so I ended up actually paying them more to do it not in their house style. Because I'm like, stop using your stupid house form builder. Just use the WordPress stuff. Like it was kind of like, I get they were doing that to be faster, so they could make more money. So they were trying to exploit a gap in the market or whatever. But I really got sick of fixing other people's code, and saying, well, I'm making a lot of money, but this sucks. I don't want to do this. Yeah. And when people are hiring me, so, I hope they care about code quality. So I got to make sure I deliver it. And I just wonder, like, do you have some ticking time bombs as far as like security holes, SQL injection attacks, missing nonsense, things like that, where you have no idea that you could get sued by a customer because their site gets hacked and you're the one who built it? Like, are you opening yourself up to liability in that respect? For example, a customer hired me to audit a plugin. They're like, oh, we want to do this pop-up thing. Can we use this pop-up plugin? There was an open SMTP relay in this plugin. Anybody could send a request to any website running this plugin and send email to any address. This plugin ran on 20,000 websites. That's a pretty massive open email relay. So I reported it responsibly to the plugin developer, to the plugin repo. It's now fixed. Yay, everybody's happy. But if I'd missed something and then that customer used it and then suddenly their site shut down for being a spam relay, suddenly like I'm on the hook for that. Yep. And if I'd outsourced that task, I now have literally put my legal liability into the hands of somebody from Serbia or the Philippines or whatever. And it's like, how much money do I have to make that worthwhile? Is a question I started asking myself. And it's a question, it's part of the reason I ended up joining an agency, and we're bucking the trend. We're not distributed. We have our first fully distributed employee, but he's in Florida, not offshore. And let me tell you, that's hard enough to manage, just in a different time zone and not physically here. But, and I managed Indians in a previous career, and man, was it hard. Yeah. Because they're working when you're not working, and you have to be really, really explicit in all your communications, and that got wearisome too. And I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this.
Yep.
And so for me personally, I've tried it. I've literally lived in India and overseen a team of developers. That part I liked because I was there, and I could see their smiling faces every day, and I could see the impact I was having on their lives, and that they were growing, and they were still frustrating the snot out of me. Oh my gosh. You did what? You spent 5 hours working around the framework for a 5-minute code change? Like, okay, let me let me teach you how to do this the right way so you do it the right way next time. It was maddening and exciting and really fun all at the same time. And now I get to have that experience with all my employees here where it's like, you did what?
Right.
You know, it's like some things don't change. Like you said, humans are humans. But at least here I know they speak English. I know they're going to come into the office. I know that, you know, if I ask them to do something they've never done before, I have a pretty good idea what I'm going to get back. So I don't know. That's like I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
I'm like, what's the word here? I'm just blabbering. But
There's
it's like,
the liability question's interesting.
Yeah.
But I think like more interesting to me is like the human question. I'm one. The way I run my business is I believe in process. Process trumps people.
okay.
Like a solid process can like solve a lot of human problems. Like you almost can't solve the human problems sometimes, but if you find like I'm not saying it like sometimes you can hire the right people and you know if they get everything you're doing, you know, like there's something to that too. But at the point where I'm at, I'm just trying to get stuff done. To me, and I imagine your business too, like you have some process, whether it's a morning scrum, where you're catching these, like, you spent 8 hours and that's what you did, you know, like, you have some process to catch these human things, even though you probably have great people, the perfect seat, right person, right seat, like, you probably still have a process to catch these human things.
We try.
Yeah.
We still miss stuff.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
Because humans are incredibly creative.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes they're incredibly stubborn, and it's like, you banged your head against the wall for 8 hours? Why didn't you ask for help?
Yeah.
Like, come on, you have like coworkers around you.
So in the liability question, I wonder, like, it's kind of like what's important. Like, if I'm doing work with the University of Minnesota, maybe I do more QA on the code. You know, I personally wouldn't do that work, but like, the liability for me is like generally speaking, a small business website, and like. Generally, if they get hacked, I got a backup. We'll go back to last month or whatever. You know, like. But it's a real concern. But at the same time, I've prioritized it lower than let's keep moving. You know, like my priority is to like, and their priority is like, we want to iterate quickly, we want it now, and move on to the next thing. Like lower costs, lower risk, you know, lower reward.
Yep. So I imagine that you screen your clients to make sure that they're ones you can outsource. Like you wouldn't take on a client where you're like, I don't even want to give this to.
Yes, like, I mean, my filter is generally like, did I even understand what they're asking for in this first email? If I don't, generally I don't want to talk to them. Like if they can define it in like a paragraph and I'm like, I got that, then I'll say yes to it.
Just clients, sorry. I have a lot to say, Dwayne.
Yeah.
Well, just clients who can't communicate are almost more frustrating than people you're working with who can't communicate.
Right.
What else did I have to say since I've got the microphone?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's something that I struggle with as a freelancer and a job-curious freelancer at that, and like the question of scaling. I really like the craft. I don't want to manage people. Figure that out. Don't want to manage people. So what scares me about, in part, scaling or growing or outsourcing is I still want to spend my time doing the work I love, not managing. So like, but not everybody's like that. Anyway, how do you deal with that?
I mean,
Maybe you like managing people.
I am very curious about managing people. But I think like when you say you want to do your craft, you could go work for Target and all you do all day is your craft. You know? So like that's one end of the spectrum.
Sure.
As soon as you enter small business ownership land, then you got small business BS to deal with. You got to do taxes, you got, all the stuff. And then as soon as you have a person that you're hiring, then you're the owner. You're not the craftsman anymore.
Right.
Yep. Because you just don't have enough time unless you're doing like one project and, I do most of my days, so I work about 2 to 4 hours a day, I'd say, and most of my time's QA and business development, following up on leads, phone calls, sales, that sort of stuff.
That's kind of the question that I wanted to get into. We were talking about outsourcing. Obviously, you're growing, you're taking work on. At what point did you decide that I can't outsource anymore, I actually need a physical person here? Because part of your discussion was, hey, I need to become this calm business and grow. At what point did you decide that, hey, I need to hire someone, I need to step back and be that owner?
So a couple things. I had 12 employees a few years back and totally couldn't fill the pipeline. So I totally failed the business test. Now I basically have one, he's about 3/4 time. This guy in Colombia, he's a great guy, and et cetera, and he's an idiot. What was your question? I'm sorry. At what point do you know when to hire? So for me, this is how I look at like when I give my guy work. Like when do I do it and when does he do it? And generally speaking, if it's something I can write down in a sentence and he gets, I give it to him. If it's something that there's going to be the minute possibility of a rabbit hole, like meaning like this could be either 15 minutes or 8 hours, then it's on his plate. And I try to just be like, you do it, go, and he'll email me back. It's like, I've been at this 2 hours. You want me to keep going? Oh yeah, like definitely. Like that's why you're here. That's kind of like for me, like when I decided I didn't want to go down those rabbit holes, because the rabbit holes are what kill business. Those are like, they're great for the craftsperson, but like they're business killers. Like the minute I do 8 hours of fishing out this bug, like I just didn't follow up on 10 leads. And so for me, that's my everyday, my decision. Like.
So you're not really a web developer, you're a business owner, sales guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a project manager, business owner, sales guy, and I do some code, and I've been writing I've written lots of WordPress code, but so I do QA. So we do GitHub, and basically I review all the code that's written and approve or comment or whatever, and then I do all the Git pushes. So basically I'm like the final code guy, but ultimately Renee does all the code, most of it anyway. Also, I think there was a point for me, to this question where I was like, the things that I value, there was a point where I was like, there are certain customers I value more than others. And generally speaking, if you're talking to Renee, this is if you're talking to my contractor, I value you less, period. I mean, otherwise they'd be talking to me. Why are they talking to this guy? That's a reality, and that's a reality I've gotten comfortable with. And I can name on my right hand the customers that I only talk to, that Renee never talks to. And it's not anything against Renee. It's just that I want to own those relationships because they're more important to my business. Should I pull up that list of thoughts? Anything else while we're doing this? I'm sorry, I jump around a bit. But
One of the things that I would say is understanding your position in your company. You're very much that customer guy. In my company, Mike Williamson is that guy for us. I'm the code guy. I'm the one that's banging out code, and I stay up 16 hours straight trying to get the website done on time. And it's really important. It's one of those things, it's like, if the customer jumps past him to talk to me, I send them back to him. Because he is the middle person who's going to he gives me that firewall, that capacity to be as crazy as I need to be. without taking it out on the client. And when you're freelancing, you're everything to everybody. When you're doing a company, you need to know where your position is and stick to it. That's the hard part. Because a lot of times you want to, oh, I can answer that question. No, if he's the person that's supposed to be the face, he has to answer the question.
It's also the agitated company is the one where the developer answers the questions. You got to let craftspeople be the craftspeople, I think, and it's hard for owners to be the craftspeople, I think. And you're the craftsperson there, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, all right, yeah.
I wrote the most code I've written in months today.
Uh-huh.
Did it feel good?
If the deadline wasn't 1 p.m., it would have felt good. It was literally like, this needs to be done. Somebody needs to do it. It looks like it's going to be me, and people were literally walking in my office just going, hey, Nick, did it? And then they'd see I was coding, and it's like, yeah, coding here. Because they're not used to that. Normally they can walk in any time because I'm doing admin stuff, I'm doing team building, I'm doing process building. I mean, my job is not much dev these days. If I want to develop, I need to do it when my kids are in bed. And that's been really tough lately because I've been working on my house and been exhausted. So I do miss it. I definitely miss it. And we're working on building processes so that I'm not a bottleneck. And I can get back to doing some coding, at least on internal initiatives. So I'm really bad at deadlines because people be like, hey, did you get that done? And it's like, so here's what happened in the last 24 hours. I went from no meetings to 7 meetings. And so no, I did not write any code today because when I went home last night, I thought I had a free day. And then I walked in, and it's literally like people are walking phones into my office. This customer needs to talk to you right now. They're hot, and they're on the line, and talk to them. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Because I'm the salesperson. I'm the CTO. So I'm the web salesperson. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, I literally have no idea what my day is going to look like, even at 8 a.m. some days. So I had one day that had 3 meetings, and then by the end of the day, I literally had basically not been at my desk until the end of the day.
I think one hard part about becoming the owner from being a craftsperson, which I was a craftsperson when I started, and it's that the product changes drastically as soon as I stopped being the craftsperson, and I had to get really comfortable with whatever it was I was now producing, which wasn't nearly as good as what I would have done myself. Do you feel like you ever get there?
Okay, so there are those days where it's like I could have written this better, and then I have some people who work for me where I'm like, I could have never. If I'd sat down with a full week of concentration, I could not have created this work of genius. To the point where I'm struggling to understand what one of my guys wrote because he's brilliant. So I have both sides of that. I get to work on code that is way better than code I would have ever written myself. I get to learn from my team. They get to learn from me. So there are, it's not all bad. I don't want to paint it as all bad. Mm-hmm. Days when it's all meetings and days when it's all admin, those days are hard. But when one of my team members, when something clicks, and I'm like, all right, they just became a better developer because I sat next to them for 5 minutes. That's a cool feeling. When I look at code that somebody else wrote, and I'm like, this is awesome. And we get to use this. We're doing a lot of tool building. We've got a product that's in private beta as of this week. That's our first SaaS product. And there's no way I could have pulled off what my guys pulled off. And so it's really cool to be walking into this going, all I had to do was say, I'm freeing you up to work on this, make it happen, and then it happened. Mm-hmm. And hours upon hours upon hours have gone into this code and refactoring it. And he's gone places I would have never gone. We've got this custom PHP daemon that counts processor ticks to figure out if it's in an infinite loop or not. That's the level of code he's writing to make this incredible service that we're building. And I would have never gone there. I would have been like, oh, I hacked it together, and I hope it does an infinite loop sometime. It's like, I thought I was a good developer, and then I hired people smarter than me, and I realized I'm an okay developer.
Yeah,
so
that's interesting. And Ashley, why you had a real visceral reaction. Can you share more about what your reaction was about.
I kind of straddle the line between, I straddle the line between, probably, I don't know, I'm probably more of a designer than a developer. So just the way things look are really important to me. So if I had to outsource to people who didn't produce a beautiful website and my name was on it, that's very painful. But that's like an artist thing, I think. It's not a business person thing.
Well, I think, so like, I look at it like your product could be like your aesthetic. Like and people then, I mean, that's an expensive product. Like if you want this aesthetic that like Ashley's thing, that's now like, you're now like in the upper tier of pricing. And you're doing fewer projects. And so I think there's a business to be built there, but it's probably not Upwork.com.
But you're comfortable, you're happy. Well, I think also when you have kids, like your priorities change. You're just like, whatever I have to do. I don't know. But yeah, you're comfortable selling a website, having somebody else do it, and then like, you're like, I would have maybe done this differently or better, but it's okay, it's gotta go.
I think like,
It's gotta ship.
yes, and the customers are happier because what I should have been selling all along was good communication, because that's what I'm great at.
Sure.
And like, I'm way better at communicating than whatever else I would do. And like, as soon as I started answering the phone every ring, customers got happier, regardless of whatever I was shipping. Because before I would have shipped something amazing a week late. And they would have been like, well, this sucks, you know, like, and now it's like, I ship something not so amazing early, and they're like, wow, this is amazing. Like,
So on a practical note, are you billing value or hourly? And have you found one works better with outsourcing as far as controlling those unknowns of the rabbit holes and things like that?
anything that's code is hourly, generally speaking. I have a couple of customers that, I mean, if I know what it's going to take, like there's one customer always wants calculators built, and I know how to build calculators really, like I just know how, I can do it in my sleep. And so I know every time they order a calculator, I know the scope, and I just like price it accordingly. Like I'm like, I know what that's going to take, here's what I'm going to charge. And, but most of the time it's like prepaid hours. So they'll buy 20 hours, we'll work them off, and then they'll buy again. I don't like that. I'd rather do more value-based and recurring. And I do have, I would say a quarter of my business is recurring right now, like maintenance, whatever, I don't know. But I would love to get more value-based. I've done some significant, for me, big value-based contracts, and they've been the best. I don't have those anymore.
We mostly do value-based.
You do?
Yeah, and we're starting to get customers where we're having to do those like maintenance agreements and contracts and stuff like that, and it's a different boat. I mean, when you can pitch the project and show them everything that they're going to be getting and say, this is going to be the price for this overarching project, it's great. And then you have to start getting into that minutia of hours per ticket, per incident, and it's like it's a different beast. And it's one of those things where my partner and I, we've got 3 contracts this year that have asked for these, and we price them so that they're high, so that they won't come to us. So, because we would rather be working on the next project, and they're coming back and they're signing on, and we're like, oh shit! Yeah. Now we got something that, and now we're gonna have to find time to do these things along with the projects that we want to do. So and so it's one of those things. It's like it's nice to have a community like this where we can be like, anybody looking for work, monthly income, solid work.
To me, the value/hourly question, to me, they're like the same thing. Because my main goal with either is to decrease the admin headaches. And like with my hourly plan, I have very few admin headaches. But the value-based, I have even fewer admin headaches. 'Cause I'm like,
But let's say your offshore developer takes 10 hours to do something that you knew took what it really should have taken 2. What do you charge your client? 2 or 10?
usually 10. And then it's up to me to manage the relationship, you know. There are times when I'm like, you know, I do every now and then I'm like, but it's not about their work. It's like, what do I think this customer will be cool with? like, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, we have to massage for certain customers because we're like, they're gonna flip their lid if they see that, and so it's like, okay, chop it off. I don't want to have an angry conversation today.
And I feel like that's what they're buying. Like that's part of the package. Like it's gonna take maybe a few more hours for that thing, maybe not. But like that's part of what they're buying. If they don't like it, they can go elsewhere, kind of, you know. And
As long as everybody doesn't go elsewhere.
yeah, right. Well, there's that. I mean, that's a thing too. Like, you know, I'm always trying to juggle that too. But, and I don't like to see people leave. But if they leave for the right reasons, I don't mind.
Sure. So here's one experience I had when I was a freelancer and I was outsourcing. I found that I was training freelancers to be hired by my competitors. It sucks. When you're like, man, I took this guy and I gave him fun projects and he learned stuff and he got to be really good. And then he took those projects that he worked on for me and used them to get a job at Westwork. And I'm like, I wanted to hire him.
That happened to me with Westwork too.
And now it doesn't
Apparently
happen
they're a
because
better-
they've shifted focus. But it was like, come on, Nick and Travis, dang it.
I know, they're so cool.
They're
Hate
so
'em.
cool. It's hard to hate them, but they took my
pay well
guy.
and they're cooler.
So anyway, for me, that was really hard because it's like I felt like I was like just when I got them good, they would go off and disappear, and then I have to go find somebody else to train in, and it's like this is exhausting.
I think like, yes, sorry, mind if I butt in on that?
Go.
I got burned a number of times with that too. And that's one reason why I started going overseas. Like if somebody's like...
Tribe hires all over the world, man.
Right.
Watch out.
Right. But even the people tribe hires, we're not in the same, we're not
Yeah.
competing for the same employees anymore. We were when I was hiring in Minneapolis, because I would like be like, here's the Josh Lightsey. You know, I imagine Josh tries to get poached every day by Modern Tribe. Like, but like,
They just sucked up, 100 or something worldwide.
really, yeah. So I mean, one advantage of going to like, I've done a lot of outsourcing in Philippines particularly, but also like in Central and South America, is like I pay these people way more than like 2-3 times what they would get as the same job in their country. And they're like loyal and ecstatic, and you know, they answer every email I send right away. You know, like versus the people I was hiring locally who were like local all-stars. If I was lucky to get a reply in a week, their work would always be late. I'd be hassling them for whatever, you know. The work was great, but, you know.
Yeah, I've been on both ends of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, what else? I was going to ask something else. So, do you think you could have avoided your idiot problem if you had locked him up full time and basically said, "You take no other work. Give me your price to work with no one but me," and that way he wouldn't have ever been soliciting other work?
Yes, and if I had just said, don't ever use this email.
Having a policy.
I don't even think it needed to be full time. I should have just. It didn't occur to me that he would do it. Like, but if
But that's your Western world. Like nobody here would do that.
Right.
But I'll tell you, having lived in a third world country, you learn really fast. Never assume. Be explicit.
Right.
And they're still probably going to do the thing
Yep.
you asked them not to do the first couple times.
Yeah.
Because it's a different culture.
But that's not to say that you don't do that here.
Right.
Well,
Because you have to be explicit in your contracts. Because that's the only way you cover your own butt.
But even then, you don't cover your butt. I mean, so you can sue me for this? Like, no, I'll just fire you. You know, like,
Yeah.
like.
employment at Will State. There's the door.
Right.
So, but yeah, I guess there's those things too where you can't assume here, but you do assume a lot here. It's like I've
Yeah.
hired someone locally. I'm assuming they're trustworthy and whatever because they walk in the door every day. And somehow we equate that with a better employee. And I'm not saying that's the case.
No, and you're right. This could have been a cultural issue and not a human, like not a personality, whatever. He could have just been like, oh, in Colombia, this is what we do. I don't know.
Whatever it takes to get ahead.
Right, yeah, like.
You know?
But now, so I talked to my lawyer after getting threatened, and she's like, just update your contract, and, whatever. Like, she's like, what are you going to do?
Learn and adjust and don't make the same mistake again.
$2,000 and not give them the website?
Honestly, I have no idea. This guy could be a troll. My guy's saying I did all the work, and he wants his money back. And so, honestly, though, like, that's not the issue for me. Like,
And I'll tell you, those clients exist here too, because we had one, we fired them, they went to another local developer, he took them on, went like $80,000 into the hole, trying to make them happy, and now they're threatening not to pay and are actually suing him for all the money they've paid him and not wanting to pay this massive bill because they're really not happy. And we were like, yeah, we kind of saw that coming. That's why we fired them.
you foisted them.
Well, no, and he came to us and he's like, I should have never taken that client. Yeah, I should have realized you guys would fire them unless they were worth firing. And it's like, this is a client wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I've had a few of those. I had one who would just go off on these swearing rants. Like I was at Minibar one time and I get this voicemail and it's like, holy cow, like this is worse than a rap video. And it's like, I had to tell the guy, I'm like, what?
You just sound very white.
Do I not look like a white suburbanite Minnesotan? So I'm just like, holy cow, you're not expecting to get that from a client. And I literally I said, dude, you need to apologize or I'm not talking to you anymore because that is absolutely unprofessional. I'll send them to you next time. Yeah. But it's like you have to determine like what level of abuse you're going to take from a client, and there are some really abusive clients out there.
I working on a project right now where the client had gone to Serbia to get his work done, and basically they had finished the project and then held the website for ransom. They doubled the price on the project, and he's like, I don't have that money. So his long story short, he basically lost all the money that he put into the project. They didn't let him have any of the code for the website. Shows up at one of the other events that we do and explains the problem to me. I'm like, okay, let's sit down. We can probably work this through. He becomes my client, and then like 2 months into the project, he calls me up, just going crazy about how I'm going to steal the website.
Oh.
I'm like going, look, we need to stop. You need to understand something. I'm not going to tarnish my reputation by stealing your project, first of all. Secondly, your project's not worth that much to me. Third, if you do not scale it back, I will fire you. So one of the comments that I wanted to make is, as developers, as owners, we can fire our client. Yeah, or your contractor. And it's one of those situations that you have to keep in mind. You don't have to keep working at this with this person that you're not getting along with. You can fire them. You can get out of it. He actually liked the fact that I pushed up against him, and we're actually at a point where we're almost ready to launch his product. And it's been a really interesting ride with this guy, because it all keeps going back to what happened in him losing the original investment. Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah, I mean, rescue projects are hard because you're not just dealing with a client, you're dealing with a wounded client, and anytime you're asking for more money, they're like, it's happening again, and it's like, no, I'm not that other. I'm asking for more money because you asked me to do more work, not because I'm trying to rip you off or trying to double it at the end. So. Yeah, it's hard when you've got people that have their trust has been broken, and they met you online, they met that person online, and they don't know how to tell the difference. So same thing with contractors. Like your guy in Columbia, you've never seen him, right?
No, I've met him. That was part of my process anyway.
Oh, you flew down to Columbia?
I flew to Columbia, met all these people. Remember I said I interviewed a bunch of people? Like I had like 10 of them that I met down there, and he's the one I ended up hiring. So.
Interesting.
Yes.
Really good drugs, I hear.
Yes, so check this out. So I've outsourced to like all those countries, and I don't, but they're all great and horrible, just like Americans. They all have cultural things that are awesome and cultural things that are like, what the? Colombians are the best fit for me personally. So I did tons of Filipino outsourcing and had full-time employees in the Philippines. The thing that rubbed me wrong, just a great people and very compatible with the United States culture. However, the one thing that isn't is they'll say yes to anything. And like I'm kind of like combative, and that like with intellectually, I'm like, tell me I'm wrong. Like just if you think I'm an idiot, tell me please. And like they never, not once, everything was yes, Toby. Yes, Toby. I'm like, can we improve this next time? Yes, Toby. Like, what happened? They whatever. But
Yes,
like,
Toby.
and they'd either say yes or just go silent if they felt like I was criticizing. So like there's like weird stuff there. The Filipinos I get along much better with in the business sense than like the Indians and Pakistanis and like there's this whole Asian China. There's like this thing where you got to be really clear about what you want built for some of these cultures. And like, I had a friend who he sent a PSD over to India at one point. He says, just build me a website. And it was like a Mac mock-up, like it was like the Mac browser or whatever, Safari in the PSD. They built inside of the Internet Explorer browser all the styles of the Mac browser. And the guy, my friend's like, oh, like,
You meant literally, right?
Yeah, right. So that didn't happen in the Philippines, but then there's this other thing. And then I went research. So the Philippines is also basically opposite ours, which can be good and bad. But I wanted someone in our time zone, and I was researching the cultures. I did some in Mexico, and I just felt like Mexico, we get along. I think the cultures are very good fit there too. But in particular, Colombians are like known for their like feisty tempers, and they'll like fight with you, and they're like ready for a fight every day, and I like that about Colombia.
And you said same time zone.
Same time
roughly,
zone,
right?
Yeah, sometimes 1 hour difference depending on the. So generally, like, yeah, we talk every day, and we can talk on the phone. I gave him a Skype number, and that's the other thing. Like, the phone calls from Central America have very little delay, whereas phone calls from the other side of the world have a lot of delay. Maybe a second or whatever.
It's that ocean.
Yeah, blasted ocean.
Darn
Or
ocean.
space or something. I don't know.
And you can write off trips to Colombia.
Yeah. When my wife okays my next trip, I will let you know. The Colombia trip in our marriage is like a huge. We don't talk about it. It was like great. It's just my wife was not happy with me going at all.
Oh, because she didn't come with.
No, yeah. So that's the one thing about it. Make sure you clear everything with your.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, like we prepared when we were in India for 6 months before the economy tanked and we came home, and we actually did a bunch of cross-cultural communication training and things like that before we went there, because we were literally going to be immersed in the culture. It wasn't just going to be Slack and, well, Slack didn't exist. Basecamp messages and Skype messages. It was going to be like, I'm living there. And I would just say, if you are going to outsource from a place, there's plenty of stuff online. Go learn about that culture. Understand that when they say yes, they're lying through their teeth because they really want to make you happy, and they will make you so happy that you hate them.
Right.
Because they will just keep saying yes, 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 and then completely blow that deadline because they thought they were supposed to say yes. And so that's a huge landmine for people who have never traveled abroad or really experienced a absolutely kind of polar opposite culture. is that you'll be absolutely caught off guard by the cross-cultural stuff going on. Or that, like in India, it was like they have like twice as many holidays as we do. And it's like, wait a minute, they're not working today?
It's like 50 holidays in
It's
India
ridiculous.
that they don't work.
But they don't
Like,
work.
They're not going to show up for work those 50 days.
No.
Like,
I was in Panama for 2 years with the military, and it always seemed like every other Friday was off. It was a banking holiday for them, where, I mean, the banks closed, businesses didn't show up, and it's like, okay, we loved it as GIs because we got that day off too because nobody worked. But it's like, what's going on here? This isn't the way that Americans work.
right. So in Philippines also, like you risk, like this cultural stuff. They get a free month of pay every Christmas. You get they call it the 13th month. If you, for whatever reason, don't know that, they're not going to tell you, and they're going to hate you because you didn't give them a free month of pay.
What?
Yeah, it's a real thing. The government, in Philippines, it's required in the Constitution that every employee gets 13 months of
But they're
pay.
not your employee. But they still expect it. Wow. How do you even calculate that for somebody who's not full-time?
Well, in this case, they were full-time.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, so that's another thing. Philippines, you can get senior level developer for $8 an hour. Compared to, you can get basically the $100, $150 developer United States compared to $8 an hour there. Central America, it's, 2 or 3 times that. South America, like Uruguay, are going to pay 40, 50, 60 bucks an hour for that probably. Mexico will be comparable to Colombia probably. Well, so Colombia, you could probably expect to pay between 15 and 30 an hour for that. The comparable of 100 to 150 an hour here.
So your clients don't know you're outsourcing to Colombia? Or they do?
Most of them do. So the ones that I hold close, there's like 5 that I'm like, they don't know, they don't care. Other ones, Renee actually does the communication. So they know, and they're always like, someone like the other, I just brought on a new one, they go, where does Renee live? I was like, oh, Colombia. And they're like, oh, I thought something because or actually what they asked was, he's not a native speaker, is he? It's like, no, he's Colombian, and
Yeah.
and that's like, so like initially I was really timid about like having him communicate because, he's not a native English speaker, and like it's very clear. Every communication, like verbs are wrong, but I decided, I made a conscious decision. I'm like, I'm going to get comfortable with that because that's not something I value. Like as a business, my business does not value Renee's speaking ability in the same way it, values other things like speed of delivery, me answering the phone, whatever.
So with the outsourcing, does that affect how you would do things? Like, for example, if you know that you can get somebody for $8 an hour, are you more inclined to be like, oh, make this whole custom plugin for me? Or are you more inclined to go, well, I don't know what I'm going to get for $8 an hour, so I'm going to stick with something tried and true? Or does it encourage you to kind of change your sort of philosophy about how you would approach things when you know there's going to be other people involved?
For me, just because of the cost per hour, because of the low cost per hour, it's let me experiment more. So I'm more willing to say yes to whatever.
So it makes it a little easier to take the risks
Yeah,
then?
exactly. And sometimes I get burned, but it's rarely a killer, like in the worst case, hopefully I break even, Basically, all the money I take in goes to development, if in a worst case, hopefully.
Anybody else?
Okay, so I'm curious, well, like overall, if you have any resources, like websites or anything specific for people who are curious, and then how did you line up a bunch of people to interview in Colombia? Like, how did that even, what's the logistics for that?
Right, so we used Upwork.com, and I'm trying to remember, we posted a job to Upwork.com, which was free. I don't know if it still is. I haven't been on there for a couple of years. But basically we said our job was, we're coming to Colombia. We're going to be in Medellin this date, and we want to interview you. Here's what we're looking for. Apply to this job as if it's like a, basically that's already built into Upwork. Like they're applying for this job, even though usually the job is like, can you fix my slider? In our case, it was like, do you want to interview? If so, just apply to this, attach your resume, answer these 3 questions. And then, so once we got let's say we got 200 applicants, we closed down the job. So we first made sure that they met our basic criterion. Are they in Colombia? Are they, do they know WordPress? Or do they say they know WordPress? Do they say they know English? If they passed that basic test, then we sent them an email that was similar to the test. It was the test we had earlier, which was, here's a website with some stuff broken and stuff that can be improved. Film yourself commenting on the site and tell us what you think should be changed. So that told us then, can they speak English? Do they know technology enough to record a screen share? So do they know how to take a screen share and email it to us in a way that makes sense? And I think part of it was upload it to YouTube, but we didn't really care. We were just can they do they understand how the internet works is really what we were getting at, and do they speak English? And then if all that was true, then it's okay, we're down to let's say 20. Send us a code example. And I think at that point we might have also had a broken web page and say, fix it. And by the way, we were paying for any step. I think at the point that we were recording videos, we paid them X amount per step basically. And so we were paying for all that. Not a lot, but it was $5 or $10. We're we'll pay you to just do this task. And then we lined up the interviews. We booked a space. It was a co-working space down there. And at the time I had a CEO and we were growing and blah, blah, blah. And we both flew down there, just lined up the interviews. We met everyone. And at that point we were interviewing for cultural fit with me. But I had a CEO that was also involved. But we were trying, so we spent a lot of time thinking what's the culture of our company? What is that? And so we thought a lot about what that means and tried to just, at that point, just okay, we know everyone can write code. We know they all speak English. Which ones are a good cultural fit? And we ended up offering, I think 3 people jobs, and we ended up hiring 1. So, and it was interesting because we totally I don't know that I would do this again, but we're playing these mind games, these idiot mind games, and I think at the time we were lowballing the salary. We were kind of just curious, how we kind of wanted somebody who was desperate, for the job. And so we ended up hiring him, and then we immediately we're oh, by the way, the lowball doesn't even matter. We're gonna triple that. So basically our theory was immediately we're buying goodwill. He goes home, he's I was offered this, and they offered me way more. And he already said yes to the low amount, and that was part of our strategy, and it's worked well, I'd say. But
what's the strategy in wanting somebody who's desperate?
Oh, it's just it's the problem Nick just described. We don't want somebody who's going to learn a bunch and leave. We want somebody who's going to be wow, these people treated me right. I'm going to be loyal to them, and so even if it was time for them to leave, they would still be God, I really like working for these people, versus I'm a gun for hire and I'm just going to go to the next highest person. And which if you know how to work that system and you live in one of these countries where $10 an hour is great, you can make $150 an hour doing that. And so we were trying to avoid that scenario. All right, thank you all. I wrote a blog post about this that I'll probably be updating. If you go to this tobycrines.com/blog, there's currently one there. I'll probably spend some time on it tomorrow, updating and just incorporating some of the discussion we had. But there it is over there. But I'm around. I'm in town. If you ever want to chat. And as you, what's that? Pretty much. I'm home all afternoon with the kids. So, yeah. And I'm also I'm very probably too forthright with sharing. So, if you appreciate that sort of thing and you want to share, I should say I err on the side of oversharing. I'd rather share too much than too little,
Well, it's part
Me
of the,
too.
it's part of the open source community.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I think WordPress in particular is special in that regard too. I don't know, I haven't been a part of a lot of them, but Nick, have you been in other communities? Is it similar, like the culturally, like WordPress community versus,
Open source communities?
I don't know, just WordPress community versus, I don't know.
I think other open source communities are similarly open. I'm part of a closed source community, and it is polar opposite. Very, very different atmosphere. Lots more money flowing around from the parent corp, but yeah, it's like, it was a bit of a shock to kind of come from, yeah, we just share, and it's competition, and to this really fierce kind of, these are the people that we are competing against, and we're all friends at night at the main conference, but that's about the only time we're friendly, and then we're out to compete for those clients, and it's a different atmosphere. It's got its pros and cons.
Yeah.
They throw way better conferences.
Yeah.
Money.
It's something that often bothers me when it happens is when somebody even somebody who's calling me to help them with something would be like, I can't share that because it's NDA. I'm like, seriously, your Craigslist-like site is NDA? They're like, I want to build a site. It's like people share stuff, and oh man, I can't tell you anymore because this is so secret. I don't know if you all experience those calls at all, but
yep.
Yeah, a little bit.
I've got the next big,
Yeah.
$1 million idea, and I need you to sign away. It's like, really, dude?
I don't even think at the highest of levels that it matters. Like Apple, everybody knew Apple was thinking about building the car. Did Google really care? I don't think so. I mean, iPhones, nobody can make an iPhone like Apple.
Well, no, in all honesty, there's like the 15, 20 different companies that are making cell phones. I mean, it's just a different configuration of the same components. It's just, they've got a hella good marketing system.
But even like in the medical device industry, they have to submit their patents well ahead of any product, but they're still secretive about it, I don't know all the details and legal stuff, but I'm always like, what's the big deal?
Well, then there's the Uber supposedly stealing self-driving technology from other companies. So that was a pretty big deal that people felt like that gave them an unfair advantage.
Oh, really?
Essentially, yeah. Somebody had started this other company and was working with this competitor to Uber, or not a competitor, that was working with somebody who was in the self-driving field. And all of a sudden, they switched to Uber, and Uber has all this really similar technology, and people are going, that seems a little fishy. It seems like this guy was maybe sent to basically steal technology secrets and bring them over to Uber. So, I don't think anything's been proven in court, but there's that place where
If you watch
I do
Silicon
get,
Valley, it happens.
yeah, I get, where it happens. You steal employees, or you steal employees, and stuff comes with them. There's as an agency owner, we have proprietary technology that runs within WordPress that we don't want to share with everyone because we've put hundreds of hours of development into it. I'm not going to go put that out on the repo.
But it's one thing to not put it on the repo. It's another to say, I can't even tell you about this technology, which I imagine I could guess what it is. You know what I mean?
There's a website about it.
Yeah.
It does not tell you how to do it. It
Right,
just tells
right,
you what it does.
right.
Well, the other aspect to that, though, is in the WordPress community, you find those people who are working on those projects, and they're willing to share with you not the intricate details, but what they've gleaned and what they've learned from those projects. So it's instead of beating your head up against the wall for this login system, you know, this is what we've learned that makes it a lot easier, and they're willing to share. Where in other technologies that I've worked in, it's like,
This is ours.
this is ours, and you know, you can come work for our company, at which point you may learn about it, but we ain't giving it out.
I will say one interesting thing that we've struggled with, I don't know how applicable this is to y'all, but we do have this proprietary technology that is a market advantage for us. Customers come to us because we have this and other agencies don't, and we're in this unique niche between two products. We've been really careful with who we let work on that, because if we let a contractor in to the inner sanctum of that product and they know how it works, we have no guarantee they're not going to get hired by a competitor to go build it for them. And so if you're a contractor, you generally don't work on projects that touch that proprietary technology. And so, yeah, it's been something where we've had to make that kind of conscious decision, like, you can come up to this point, but this is as far as you get until you're a full-time employee, and we're equally invested in this being a success and not being stolen, kind of. So it's been that was kind of a really new thing for me, because I was used to, oh, it's all GPL, here's the code, here's a snippet, whatever, and now it's like, yeah, you technically work for me, and I know you can't see that. So.
But how many hours to build that thing? Is it like 10,000 hours, or, you know?
We're not at 10,000 yet.
Not at, okay.
But we've also done, like, if you were to see it, or definitely if you had a Git repo, there's stuff where it's like, it took us, we're on version 3 now, and it took us a lot of learning to get to the simplicity that it has now, where you would be way ahead of the curve if you had access to that.
Right.
And took that somewhere else.
Yeah, I guess like I'm always like thinking the other way though. Like, let's say we just shared the idea. Let's say you were just like, here's what it is, and you probably tell the customers that, like in the sales.
Customers are, what does it do?
Yeah.
It connects
Right.
and WordPress and all these web services seamlessly, and they go, yeah, that's great. And I'm not, it's
Right.
like, oh, you have to sign an NDA to
Right.
So that's an NDA for something you actually have something to disclose something about, not for an NDA for like, hey, I was taking a shower and I had this.
Yeah, totally different thing.
Yeah. But that's it.
Well, but just the fact that like a single person thinks that they can start something that's going to be huge without having like without being venture backed is just kind of funny.
Those
They
people
think that
generally
they're going
have
to
no
start
money
the next.
either.
Well, that's true.
How much for a mobile app? Can I get one for $5,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I want to be the next Bill Gates, but we have to start off with $1,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Bill Gates didn't start off with $1,000.
He wrote the code. That's the thing. You can start off with $1,000 if you write the code.
Right.
But you can't hire somebody to write it for you. That's the right number.
Or I have $5,000 and I love Apple's website. Can you give me that?
Right.
When we ask for 3 to 5 example sites, we should say,
No.
not allowed, apple.com, Airbnb.com.
Right.
Yeah, no top 100
Yeah.
sites. Unless you have a top 100 site budget, do not give me a top 100 sites. I want
People
to
don't
keep it.
understand that though.
That's the key. If you don't have the budget, because it's a beautiful aspect when they come up to you and they're like, well, I've got this idea and I need help. It's great, you want to help them. It's the aspect of, I've got this great idea and I want it to look just like this. And it's like, if you want that, it's never going to be, because it's already been built. Everybody's going to, I'm like, I don't know how many customers I've just fired, or I should say walked away from.
Right.
Because it's like, okay, I want it to look just like this. It's like, that's not going to work.
I had a great experience this last week. I was meeting with a current customer, and it was kind of this question. They're like, I really want it to do this crazy thing. I was like, I could do that, and I'll be working on that for the next 3 weeks, and it'll be exactly what you wanted. And at the end of the day, it's not going to lead to $1 more in your bank account. So do you want me to do that? They're like, or do you want me to work on this other? I was basically like, should I do that or this other thing that's really cheap that'll help you? And she was like, it's very rare that somebody goes, yeah, let's do the smart thing. Like, usually they're like, no, I really want that thing. Like,
I'll do it, I'll bill you for it. You're gonna hurt after a while.
But the worst is the Quora questions. You've been asked to answer a question in Quora. What theme does Microsoft.com use? It's called custom and it costs $1 million.
I feel bad too, like the, you can't ask quality questions until you get deep. And so like, I also like, I don't know, there's like no great response to a lot of the stuff. So what's that? What's that? Oh.
You want to talk to me?
Is that a developer or?
He's the founder of Real Design. He's got this creative mornings talk called After You Pay Me, except
Oh, okay.
he swears.
Ah.
It's hilarious. Him and his lawyer just kind of lay on the wall like, you're a professional, act like a professional. You don't work for free. Somebody asks you to work for free, after you pay me. And it came at a time when I really needed it because I like clients more.
Yeah.
So.
There's another one like Pay the Writer. You ever hear that one on YouTube? It's similar, I think, but also great. Like.
He's got a book called Design as a Job. That's
Oh, cool.
The safe for work version of his stuff.
Uh-huh.
He's like, it's a job. You should get paid to do your job.
What books are you guys all reading for for fun or work?
Speed of Trust.
What's that about?
I haven't gotten all the way through it, but it's pretty much putting trust in your employees that you have, and then how that can make your company more efficient. If you trust your employee and you're like, I need you to get this project done, and they can go do it, and you trust them to do it, there's less overhead, it's faster, and it just moves. And it's a book that talks about speed of trust and how it's measurable, and then how things you can do to improve trust. So if you're working with someone and you're like, I trust them as far as I can throw them, like it talks about how to rebuild that trust, which I'm reading it now, and with where I used to work, there was such a lack of trust that I'm reading this book now.
Make a note of
and I'm
that.
like, oh my gosh, like if we would have just had a little more faith in each other,
Yeah.
budgets would have been hit a little faster. So.
Cool. I'm just making a note. I'm gonna check that out. Yeah. I mean, it sounds very relevant. I feel like with business books, I always like to read the ones that are directly applicable right now. Like I was involved just like a hard-nosed negotiation once, and I read Getting Past No, and it was like, yes, this is exactly what I needed right now. Anyway, so what else y'all reading? Thank you.
On that note, there's a book called The Trust Advantage that talks about how trust is a key differentiator in your business. And that if you're the trusted business, you'll get the work and get the points. It's by, what's it called? Smoker and Grand Old Lincoln, I cannot remember his name. It's called The Trust Advantage, and it's by Dave Horsheimer. He's one.
Cool.
So,
I mean, it's a good point, because we kind of can get in bubble where, to us, the code is the most important thing. The code does matter, the design does matter. They don't have anything
they can't evaluate.
yeah, they can't
Right.
do that anything. It's not their area of expertise, so all they have to go by is that trust.
And you said it, like, great code a week late, man, this just does not work. Same code a week early, this is awesome.
Inferior
Because
code.
the trust was from.
Yep.
But the bigger part of when you were talking about that is the fact that you are that middle person. You're the person that's given that trust or developing that trust with the customer. So you could be 3 months late, and if the customer still trusts you and still trusts the process, they'll be happy with it.
There's a great, one of the most recent WP Tavern podcasts, Kiko Doran was on it. He's organized a couple WordCamps in Minneapolis, but just a great interview. He talks that project. So he did like, he doesn't say the budget. I'm guessing it was in the millions, but he said it was a year late, and all the investors are saying at the 1 year point, they're like, we need to launch today. And he was like, no, we're not launching. And it was a year late being delivered, but like at the end of the day, like they trusted him to whatever. But
This wasn't the Apple project.
yeah, yeah, he says all this on the interview.
No, I mean, the project.
The Tuniversity or Tuniversity.
Anniversary, that was the one.
Yep. Yeah, the podcast is great. I don't know if you listen to WP Tavern, but yeah. But it's cool. He was working on a big, obviously millions, and he was like the project manager on it. He was just on the fucking Travis was in the room too. A cool dude. And the guy we were ripping on earlier was just like stealing all the great developers. He was in the podcast with Kiko, but both awesome guys. But yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I heard Rowan worked on it too.
Oh, okay.
He did a lot of JavaScript on it.
Yeah. I think.
But it's understandable why it would take over a year, because
Yeah.
corporate, you're dealing with people on one coast and on another coast.
They were literally pushing iTunes ebooks to their limit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they.
You could do it.
Yep. There were. Yeah. It was.
It's a really cool project. If you guys look it up, it's called Tuniversity.
Yeah.
And they took Farrell's Happy, and it's an ebook that includes GarageBand files so that you can learn how he composed Happy and then make your own version of Happy with the samples they provide you. And it's the goal is to teach and inspire young people to make music using literally one of their favorite songs. So it's a really cool technology.
Yeah.
success, and just
When I feel like.
way of learning.
Yeah, I feel like when I get it, since I've gone down this path, I now like look at the world differently. I remember as an artist when I was coming up, there's a book called The Design of Everyday Things, and it was like basically after I read it, I looked at the world differently. I was like, this post, should that be there? Should it be a post? Like, what's up with the handles on that fridge? And I think that now, like, this project in particular with Kiko, basically he's like looking at music education going, we're doing it all wrong. I'm going to show you how to do it right, and that's what this project is about, and it's really cool.
Well, when you start looking at what WordPress pushes boundaries on, I mean, shoot, the beginning of it was just a blog. Now, I mean, it's the closest to content management system that you really can get when you start with a blog as the underlying architecture.
Right.
And it's really, I mean, I've been playing with BuddyPress for the last year. Those are the projects, 3 projects that I've been playing with the last year. And what BuddyPress actually is capable of doing is phenomenal. And people they just don't see it. And to me, it's one of those things where it's like, it's just pushing the code, pushing the dynamics of what the environment is capable of doing. I've got one that is an open environment, open shared environment. I've got one that has tiered system, and there's one that's a total closed lock key environment. And each one starts off with BuddyPress. And it's like all 3 if you were to look at them, you can see where the BuddyPress is a derivative, but each one handles and does everything on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting that you're using the base, but all these different environments that you can build from just the same starting point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just impressed that you found things, buddy.
Well, for a while there was BuddyPress. Lots of people were doing BuddyPress, and then
It's kind of dead, but it's
Facebook won, and like nobody else wanted to even attempt to
yeah,
see the number.
yeah.
The true, and
I know what to do more than that. I think in their mind, it's like
people kind of like took it to a point and then decided instead of it being competing with Facebook, what they decided that they were going to do is just make it so that it's part of an intranet structure instead of an internet structure.
Right.
So it works really good for closed environment, sharing information, sharing, and they totally like left off, being able to use this across internet, across channels and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, when you start looking in the chats and in the forum groups about why they decided to, do that fork, it's like, really, it's interesting to see how their mindset evolved to that level. But I came back and I'm like, it's great for internet. Yes, it is great, but I want to actually, do more with it. So I ended up having to hack a lot of stuff and build my own plugins and whatnot. But these 3 sites actually, there's no reason why you can't build your own private Facebook.
So I'm curious, like this idea that like you're not selling what you think you're selling, is anyone feeling that at all? Like, do you think
It's kind of one of those what you end up selling versus what the project was first pitched.
But if you're not selling web dev, what are you're saying you're not selling web dev, or that's my question, I guess. Like,
I sell web dev, but at the same time, there's so much other stuff.
But for you, web dev, is it the thing that people are buying, or are they buying something else? Like at the end of the day,
No, they're buying. They're not buying the web dev. They're buying the product. Because to me,
so then, yeah, but then, so how does that, maybe you're already there, but like, so they're not buying your development, they're just buying a product. How does that shift the way you run your business, potentially, or,
We sell the product. We sell the finished product. We know that our clients don't care how the sausage is made. They want a brat. And we get to go through and figure out what meat's going to go into that brat, and what's going to, what seasonings we're going to put in there.
But if they don't care, should you just put kangaroo in there?
If kangaroo gets you to the finish point faster, yes. A lot of times, a lot of the projects that we're taking on are things that people have like this imagined dream that they want to get to. So this is going to be the next $1 million dream, but they don't know how they're going to get there. And me and my partner do diligent research. We try and put together things using WordPress because it's a nice, controllable environment. And then we head out from there. And it's a lot of times it'll take us 2 months to figure out, nope, you can't do that. And we come back and tell the customer, your dream is just a dream and it's never going to get to go anywhere. Or we can actually figure out, yeah, it's a dream, but we need to start off with $100,000.
yeah. What about this table? You guys feeling any visceral reaction to anything that we've talked about tonight?
I wish I did that.
Wish what?
I said if I was younger, I'd go back and learn some coding. That's why I keep you guys here.
Yeah.
You know what all the developers are thinking? I wish I could design.
Yeah.
I'm in love with Divi. Small sites with Divi works out pretty well. I agree. I think they're buying the product more. It's not how it goes together. I've tried to hand projects back to clients and they don't want them. They'd rather just pay me to host and maintain, and I'll call you if there's problems. And some of them, when I have a college professor over in Cal
Right.
That's right. So I tell people I do more hosting and maintenance now than I do development. And I'm not banging the pavement looking for clients. So that's the downside.
I know a handful of years ago, I was working for a company, and they built software that was IBM software, scheduling software, and I was the one and only web developer. And we were gonna take on this new project, and I went to my boss and I'm like, there's no way I can support the 18 sites that this company has, plus take 4 of them and build a brand new site. And he's like, yep, so you're gonna get a contractor. And I had never worked with any other developer before, and I'd never worked with a contractor. And so we found a contractor, brought him in, and then I started to like see what he was doing, and I lost my shit. I was like, oh my God, this is wrong. Why is he doing it this way? We need to stop. We need to fix it and do it right. And my boss just looked at me and he's like, is it getting done? And I was like, yes. And he's like, everything can be fixed. He's like, let's just focus on getting it done, and then the next phase, when you take it over, will be just chopping it up and fixing it and doing it the right way. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
Sure.
Wow.
You know how many projects I've taken on that have been under that mindset? It's like, we will pay for the project. Company spends millions of dollars on a project that they really never had designers and UX guys in on the conceptualizing phase of it. So when it does come to deployment, it goes to deployment, half of it doesn't work for the company. So they then spending millions of dollars more getting it to actually work for their company.
But that's the question of when he asked me is, does it work? And it's like, well, yes. And even if it wasn't the right advice, it was a piece of advice that I used to kind of help calm down a little bit and be like, all right, this is not the end of the world. This isn't good.
What were you feeling at that moment where you had to accept it? Like, do you remember?
Like when he told me that, I was like, you're right. Because the site, our big project was actually, the sites were garbage we were trying to fix and make better anyway. So it was like, you're right. It's just, instead of working on 4 terrible sites, I'll be working on 1 site. And so it was something where it was just like, you're right. I can go in and I can fix this as long as there's nothing catastrophic happening. It's not the end of the world.
Neat.
So that was just a piece of advice that, even like I said, even if it wasn't the right advice, it just kind of helped keep me from freaking out and losing my mind. I'm like, oh my God, we're failing. It's like, no, we're doing fine. We're good.
When you were talking earlier about calm versus an active business.
Agitated.
Yeah.
I came from agitated businesses to begin with, where you're always just putting out fires, dealing with customers, putting out fires, dealing with code. To when I started my business, and it's like hearing you label off all those things, it's like, oh wow, because my partner and I sat down at the very beginning. We're older guys. We came at this later in life. We were already in our 40s. And it was one of those things that's like, we sat down and we talked about it, and we're like, we don't want to do this the hard way. We need to come up with ways of making things simpler and easier. I mean, it's from our contract all the way to how we handle our customers. We've had a working conversation. We go through a customer, and at the end of the customer, we actually have a post-mortem, for the project, where we sit down and we talk. Okay, what worked, what didn't work, how do we change it so that the next customer will work better, that kind of thing. And it's one of those things. A lot of what you were saying about being a calm business, you're doing. We're so involved in, because both of us have seen way too much, trying to put out fires and trying to calm people down, just going from thing to thing to thing to thing without actually having a roadmap. And it doesn't work. Yeah, you can make money, but you don't have, your stress level is so high for the amount of money that you're making. We've been working 3 projects this year, that's it. And all 3 projects, our customers, they're stellarly happy with. They're phenomenally over the moon. And it's one of those things, when you have that relationship with your customer, it is so much different than dealing with a customer who's calling you every, 3 or 4 times a day because something else blew up, or they perceive as a blow up. You do understand that was supposed to work that way. Customer can't log in. Well, what did he do? Well, he did, he went through step 1, step 2, and then step 3, it kicked him out. Well, step 2, at the end of step 2, he's supposed to get a confirmation email. Did he go check in his email? Oh, the customer said he never received an email. Okay, let's go take a look at that. Server sent out email. It's in his inbox. He just wasn't looking for it under the heading or the title that it came in. And it's one of those things. It's like, okay, so that's a learning thing. We'll make a video for that so that when future customers run across that, they know what to do.
Yep.
But and it's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it looks like Nick's about ready to go home here, and it's about time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for sharing. It's been fun.